So it's making that shift from talking about we to talking about you. So like one tip that I can in order if someone wants to is watching this and they want to look at their website and improve it in 5 minutes, look at every sentence where you start with the sentence with we or your product name, and just flip the sentence around and start the sentence by focusing on you, talking to who, meaning putting the focus on your reader rather than saying we are amazing or our product is innovative or whatever these type of things which we see a lot in marketing. It's really about putting the focus more back on the audience and they're telling the story from their perspective.
Hello everybody, welcome to Founder's Ascent. Today we have a special guest named Adam. And just, Adam, give us a quick introduction about yourself. What do you do? And how did you get started doing it?
Hi, so I am a conversion copywriter for B2B SaaS. So I help B2B SaaS companies sort of stand out from the noise by clarifying their message and optimizing their copy so that they can attract more customers and ultimately grow their revenue. I discovered copywriting almost by accident. It's actually interesting. I was always a strong writer and always used to get compliments on my writing, at school and that type of thing. And I always wondered, okay, hey, that's great, but how's it actually going to pay the bills? And so I tried to do I tried a bunch of things, editing along the way, and didn't enjoy any of it. And I literally discovered copywriting almost by accident. I fell into it, fell in love with it, and the rest is history. So that's where I am today.
How did you find it? When you say by accident, what does that mean?
Well, my wife, she's a graphic designer, so she'd worked with copywriters in the past, and I'd never heard of copywriting as a field before. So one day she said, hey, why don't you try getting in contact with this copywriter that I've worked with in the past and see if that could be for you? And I was like, okay. So I emailed this copywriter and I said, this is what I do, this is who I am. Do you think there's a future for me in this field? And she was like, sure. I'm actually starting a course in a couple of weeks, teaching people how to get into the field. And I was like, wow, this is amazing, great timing. I signed up for the course and took the course, and then everything led from there. So when I say I sort of discovered it by accident, I didn't know about it as a field, I guess, as a field which was profitable and lucrative prior to actually getting my feet wet.
And how important is sort of different skill sets that you might have? Do you employ SEO much? What sort of skill sets do you think are necessary for being successful at what you do?
Sure. So I think it's a key understanding of behavioral psychology and persuasion principles. And at the same time, it's it sort of fuses the science of persuasion. So for people who aren't familiar with copywriting, you may be listening. So copywriting is essentially it's been described as selling with words. It's salesmanship in print, if you like. It's communicating messaging in order to drive people to take action. So it's really a fusion of the science of persuasion and behavioral psychology with the art of developing original compelling messaging in finding new ways to say things that may have been communicated before, but making it fresh. So it's sort of fusing the arts and the sciences together to come up with a compelling message for the audience that you're writing for, in order to drive them to take action for whatever you're trying to persuade them to do.
Interesting.
And what do you think is sort of the key with that a lot of maybe companies or individuals are failing to do in their marketing? Is there one tip that you seem to be constantly recommending to basically everyone?
Okay, yeah. So there's a lot to say. There's a lot to say about that. The one thing I would say that is not I see too often is that a lot of companies, they focus the message, they focus what they say to their customers, but on themselves, so that they'll on their website, on the landing pages, a lot of the times they'll be talking about their company or their product from their own perspective. Whereas in order to sort of compel the audience to take action, they need to be speaking from the audience's perspective. So you need to really be joining the conversation that's happening in your customer's mind when they sort of land on your website, when they land on your landing page, when they receive their email. You need to be sort of in their minds and understanding what's driving them, what's behind their customer journey, like what do they want, what are they looking for, what problems they're dealing with, in order to sort of move them from where they are to a position where they're ready to take action. So it's really about, and that really happens through deep customer research. That's where like the messaging like doesn't live in your head when you're writing. It lives in them. It lives like in the heads of your. It lives in the heads of the people you're writing for. It lives in the heads of your audience. So it's making that shift from talking about we to talking about you. So like one tip that I can like, in order if someone wants to like, is watching this and they want to like look at their website and improve it in 5 minutes, look at every sentence where you start with the sentence with we or like your product name, and just flip the sentence around and start the sentence by focusing on you, like talking to who, like meaning putting the focus on your reader rather than saying like we are amazing or our product is innovative or whatever like these type of things which we see a lot in marketing. It's really about putting the focus more back on the audience and like they're telling the story from their perspective.
So like, what are examples of things that you'd say, like concrete examples, if you can remember any at the top of your head that you've done in the past?
Meaning what I've seen that, meaning like what, for example, what I've seen where I see there's room for improvement.
Yeah.
Okay, so like this is a great example. So I was doing research for a company. It was a SaaS company in the like sort of construction space. They have an app that help like working like they help companies with timesheets and automating like the whole process. So I was doing competitive research, looking up a bunch of like websites of their competitors. So I'm not joking, 3 of the websites, their headline on the website was, we are the number one, and then whatever the product category was. Like we are the number one. So I was thinking to myself, like any customer like doing, and analyzing the, sort of the space, trying to pick a product, like at least one of you is lying, right? Because you can't be all number one. So it's that type of thing where you say like, you want to say, oh, we are the best, or we are number one, where it's really like, and when everyone else is saying the same thing as well, especially when everyone else is saying the same thing, that's not going to help you stand out. That's not going to help you like connect with like, the problems for why the people are coming to your product in the first place. It's that disconnect. Another classic example in the space that I'm in, like SaaS, tech, those type of companies. A lot of the times, like the people who are responsible for the messaging, or like the founder, if it's like a small startup, are typically very technical. They're like they love the product. They know the product like the back of the hand. They built it from scratch. They're obsessed about the features, right? Whereas people don't buy a product like for the features. They buy a product for like the transformation that it's going to bring to their day-to-day life. So another classic problem that you find a lot in sort of the tech space is that companies will focus just on the features, and they'll just like their communication, their messaging will be just like a feature list of our product does this, and this. And whereas people are really looking for what can it do for them? What's the benefit? What's the outcome that this product will give them? So those would be 2 examples where I can think of that where there's a lot of room for improvement.
And so part of what you do a lot of times is looking actually at what other people are doing and making sure that when you write something for a client, that stands out among their
100%, right. So so looking at that, so a big part of the research that goes into the copywriting process is competitive analysis, which means like looking for opportunities to say something unique. So that means what are other companies like not focusing on? What are they not saying? So you can try and like fork out a wedge in the market by communicating something unique that other people aren't focusing on.
And when looking for competitors and trying to understand customers, what sort of resources do you use? Where's the first place you go?
To understand the competitive landscape?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm typically having like internal discussions with like the team, that I'm working with. So, with different members of the team, the VP product, the sales team, to understand what they view as the competitive landscape. But the real insight can sometimes come from when I get on the phone with customers, and I ask them, if it wasn't for product X, what would you use? Right? Because a lot of times, especially also in SaaS and tech space, the companies think that they are competing with the other companies doing the same thing in their space, Whereas a lot of the times they're actually competing with like Excel or like Google Sheets, right? So like because again, like it's the found, you know, like the team, the founders are like very much entrenched in like their space. So all like they see a lot. What they see a lot is like the other companies around them. Whereas like from the customer's perspective, they might not have even heard of these other companies if they're sort of like relatively small, right? So it's just, so that the status quo, like without this product, would have been, I'll just use Excel, you know. So then you're not positioning yourself against, you know, the other product in your space. That you're positioning yourself against, you know, Excel or a spreadsheet. So and that makes all the difference in terms of how you communicate your value.
Gotcha. So you talked a lot about a little bit about psychology, at least. Did you have any like knowledge or foundational understanding in psychology before you got started in this, or was it just primarily writing?
So I just had like strong writing skills, and I think that's also like one of the, that's one of the advantages of this of copywriting as a profession, is like the level of the bar of entry in terms of like what you need to have when you come in is like relatively low, in terms of like you don't need to have a degree, you don't need to have like a college education in order to be successful. So I didn't know, I hadn't studied behavioral psychology in depth before I, entered the copywriting field. It's something that I picked up along the way.
How did you pick it up?
Learning online, reading books like Cialdini's like Influence is a classic that everyone's read. Lots of people have read. So reading studies online, like immersing myself in online education, and also like reading these type of books which have lessons in behavioral psychology.
How much has AI and like ChatGPT affected what you do?
So I can say for myself, like I don't think I think it's a tool. I'm not like so scared about it like replacing our people in our profession like right now so much. I think that it can be a great aid to help you like write better copy or write copy faster. I don't think it's gonna replace the like sort of the originality and like the creativity of human mind right now. And what's interesting is I think that even clients or even people not in like the marketing space, like in the marketing space at the moment, like all the talk on LinkedIn, all the talk on social is about AI, it's coming for us, it's gonna replace us. I think like I was on a call with a client the other week, and they said to me, like, can you help me? I wrote an article, I wrote a post on LinkedIn, and it didn't do so well. And I'm pretty sure it's because I used ChatGPT to write the title, right? So that was a big insight for me, because it means that like, people realize that it has limitations. And the other thing is to actually get good results out of your prompts. You need to be a copywriter, because if you just write one prompt and expect like a great answer, and you don't iterate and like try and refine like the response you get from the AI, you generally don't come out with like amazing results. So even to get the like quality output from like from the AI itself, you need the tools, you need the skills of copywriting to achieve the outcome you're looking for. Really, if you just go in without any strategy, then you're unlikely to get like a truly compelling response.
And so, how much have you actually used AI in a professional capacity? Barely at all, or? I haven't got too busy with it. I probably could like explore it more. I haven't felt it sort of necessary yet to get so busy actually using it in my actual work. I have used it for research like a couple of times, but then again, I did find that it came up with quite generic points. Like it didn't. I mean, when I'm looking for points of messaging that will resonate, nothing replaces talking to, talking actually to the customers and like having these conversations where you can actually probe and hear what's not being said. Understand the conversation on a deeper level. Like there's a tool out I saw someone advertise. It was about doing customer research, but like with AI. So it was instead of like asking real people, like you would get research
from AI, AI generated people, and I just don't think that's going to fly as like providing the quality that you can get doing it in real life.
I had similar experience using AI to sort of identify companies. It all at some point it all just became identical copy paste descriptions,
right?
Because they all to the AI seems to do basically the same thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What are some softwares that you use that you think are very beneficial for your job, if you use any?
So my tech stack is actually like quite basic. I don't have like a massive array of different tools that I use. In terms of like tools which actually can help your writing, which I think anyone would be beneficial for anyone to use.
Yeah.
So there's something called like the Hemingway app, which is great at like you put your writing into that and it tells you what grade level you're writing at. So like for example, like typically copy converts less well once you get over like grade 7. That tends to like decrease the level of effectiveness. People tend to, the harder it is to read, so then the harder it is to actually process. So if you want to, that was a tool I used to use more at the beginning, less now as I've got deeper into the field. But that's a great tool for sort of analyzing your writing. Another tool that's great for running a sort of a client, like a service business. I've found like Fathom for like recording Zoom calls is also great. I used to use other tools to get a transcription of the calls that I was on with my clients, and that was either terrible, that was either like laughable AI, or it was like very expensive. And so like this Fathom came along, and now there's a whole bunch of other tools that do the same thing, and you immediately so instantaneously get a transcript of your call with very high quality AI. So that's also made my sort of process, if you like, much quicker, because I don't have to wait around to get like the transcription, and it just gives me a recording of the calls, and that's great.
Interesting.
What are some like challenges you faced since entering this industry?
What do you like challenges in what area?
Maybe challenges in finding clients, maybe challenges in working with a particular type of clients that this is just a difficult, they don't understand something that could really improve their business, and you consistently have to explain.
Right. So the beginning, I was less niched. At the beginning, I wrote generally for B2B. I presented myself as like a B2B, writing for anyone B2B, any companies, any B2B companies. So I found that in the general B2B world, there's much less education about what copywriting is and its value. So when you're working with clients, and you have to educate them as to like the value of the service you provide, that's like makes the whole process like one step harder. Whereas what I found with like SaaS and tech companies, they seem to be more clued in to the actual value of copy and what it can do, because their business is primarily based, off their website is their salesperson. Whereas like traditional B2B companies might be selling more in traditional ways, like at trade shows and like brochures and that type of thing. So because I think the online selling is where SaaS happens, of course, they understand the value of copy better. So your first conversation, you don't have to like go through that whole education of like, well, this is what I do and this is why it's important. Like they get why it's important and they just want your help. So that's made it easier. I think other difficulty that all copywriters have, and this is actually really interesting, is I think that because copywriting is writing, right? So I think a lot of people think they can do your job, right? Essentially, like if you hire a graphic designer, or you hire a coder, yeah. So like when they come out with your website developed or designed, you don't say, well, I could do a better job than you, because like I'm not a coder, I don't know how to write code, and I don't know how to do graphic design, but I can write. I mean, I wrote essays in school, right? I write for my job, so I can. I think copywriters can sometimes have is like when you get pushback on your work, people think that they can do, people think they can do what you do, and they don't understand the strategy and the thought process that's gone into like every word literally on the page, like where you put it, why you've decided this word choice over that word choice, like the arrangement of the word on the page, like everything is strategic. And I think people not all clients like appreciate that as much as others. So that's sometimes a challenge.
Do you ever get like clients that are like extremely difficult to work with, that like they hire you and then you give them a recommendation and they just they're like, I don't know about this or something like that?
So I once ago I had a few issues. I did have a couple of like difficult situations when I started out, but I changed my process to sort of like preempt that problem. What I do now is whenever I'm presenting copy, so I'm presenting my work to my clients, I begin the presentation with a feedback guide. Like I tell the client, okay, like this, I'm going to present you copy that I've worked on. This is the research process that I went to get to this point. The following points are useful feedback. So, and I'm talking about things like, inconsistencies, or if like, there's any legal issues with the copy, but like it has to remain objective. Like I tell the client before I present the copy that if you can come back with comments like, I like this, I don't like this, that's not acceptable. Because what I tell my clients is that we're writing for, this copy that we're writing is for your customers. It's not for you. So essentially, like the owner of the company or like the CMO doesn't have to like the copy. I mean, they have to like the copy and have to approve it, but it's not essential that they actually resonate with the copy, because at the end of the day, it's written for their audience, not for them. So when you get comments like, well, I like this and I don't like this word, I like that word, that's not useful, that's not helpful. So what I found streamlines the process is to be transparent about that beforehand. So I tell them like, this is what's going to be helpful and this is what's not going to be helpful, and then leave it up to the client to sort of absorb that and use those guidelines to sort of provide effective feedback on the work that I present them.
And what sort of do you think sets apart successful copywriters from those that don't actually manage to do so well in changing results?
So I think it's a combination of two things. I think it's a combination of like innate skill in the craft. I think that some people might get into copywriting that are just have less aptitude at the actual craft of writing fresh, original copy. I do think that a lot of it is more like the business side of it, though. I think like people who are more willing to put themselves out there, more willing to sort of like be uncomfortable in terms of like going around getting clients. I think that's a lot of where the success lies. Like people who are more like who have that side down, I think would be more generally more successful. I think it's almost more about like how business savvy you are in terms of like how you run the business and how you go about what's your lead gen strategy, rather than necessarily like how the absolute level of your skill. I think that's really what sets people. I think that's really why people become successful.
How do you primarily get clients? What does that process look like?
So I built my whole business on LinkedIn. I started out, when I started my business, I started posting actively on LinkedIn. I had like less than 500 connections, really like starting from scratch. And I built that up over time. And just by posting consistently, by posting consistently, demonstrating my expertise, and building a network. So the combination of like a network and also being active on LinkedIn and putting out content, sort of authority building content, that really like attracted leads. And then from then sort of more recently, so referrals from existing clients. So like the original client may have come to me on LinkedIn, and then like they've referred me to another client, who've referred me to another client, etc. So it's really a combination of like you sort of leveraging a network and also being active on LinkedIn to bring in more inbound leads.
And so what does that process look like? So you obviously make your own posts. You're also, it seems like, commenting on other people's posts. Like, what do you think is the most effective that you've seen on LinkedIn? The most effective way of marketing?
So like, I wouldn't say I'm like the biggest LinkedIn expert. My account's not like, I don't have like tens of thousands of followers, but I think like the key to success is being successful. It's being successful and like being like generous in terms of like supporting other people as well. But just I think that consistency, like I've seen since I've even been active, I've seen people come and go. Like I've seen people who were posting consistently or fairly consistently and now seem to have dropped off and they're not here anymore. So I think like what will ultimately like make the difference is just how consistent you are. Like if you're consistently showing up and providing value, making insightful comments on other people's posts, then that will give you a reputation as someone that, is trustworthy and knows the craft, and will be a source of like people looking to work with you.
Was there ever any compulsion to go on other social media channels? Like everyone's talking about the new threads. Did you?
Yeah, I've taken the approach to just focus my efforts on one place. I thought that would be better and more productive than trying to spread myself thinner and like being everywhere. Obviously, like I realized that putting my content on more channels would expose me to more people. Having said that, I think my target audience is primarily on LinkedIn, more than other channels. So, I think it depends like what's going to be your main channel depending on like which field you're in. But for like tech, SaaS, copyright, B2B, I think definitely LinkedIn is like the best place to be. So my approach so far has been to focus solely on like being the most valuable there, rather than trying to sort of spread myself across different channels.
That makes a lot of sense. And it seems like you try to simplify your whole process. You don't have this super complicated tech stack. You stick to one marketing channel. It's all a very streamlined, simplified approach so that you just don't have to worry about things. Yeah.
Yeah. The tech stack is expanded with necessity, but it's not like I've got like a massive amount of apps and different applications that I use. I find like because I found that because I don't have like a massive amount of clients at any one time, so I'll typically take on like 2 or 3 clients per month, not like more than that, and like focus on sort of larger projects. So I haven't felt the need to get super complicated with like project management software and stuff like that. I find for me, I find like keeping it simple with like Google, with the G Suite and like Google Docs usually is more than enough. Like I haven't found the need to expand to more complicated software.
And when it comes to setting goals for yourself, you mentioned a lot about on LinkedIn, the key is just being consistent. So do you think if you had to choose, do you think setting a lower goal that you're guaranteed to hit 100% and being consistent on that one goal is a better strategy? Or do you set like something that's way out there, double what you're actually capable of? And maybe you'll do a little bit better, but you're not going to hit that goal.
Actually, it's interesting you asked me that, because I actually posted about this, I think quite recently. I made a goal for myself at the beginning of this year. No, it was actually interesting, like a psychological like phenomenon that I discovered. So I made a goal for myself at the beginning of this year. I wanted like an income goal. I wanted to like hit a certain amount of revenue in 2023, right? So then I took stock like at the middle of the year, and I noticed that like I'm exactly on target. Like not a little bit above, not a bit like little bit below, like exactly on target, exactly hit the goal. And that sort of made me realize like, hey, like maybe this is like a subconscious phenomenon that like you'll just like adjust your performance to achieve the goal that you set. So that got me thinking like, so why don't I just set the goal higher? Like if I can do that and like I can hit my target wherever it is, so then maybe I can do that even more. So my answer to the question would be, I think from my experience, set goals which don't seem to be attainable, and then you never know. Like if my experience could be repeated, like even scaling higher, then you never know what you can achieve. Whereas if you set your sights too low, so then you might hit your goals, but who knows what you could have done if you'd set your goals higher. That's what I would. That's my answer.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like a lot of people are split on that one. I think I've heard both answers said a lot, but I guess it really just depends on the person.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the data you look at when you get a new client, what sort of numbers do you want to see from the website, from their marketing, to really gauge the health of their marketing?
Before I decide to take them on as a client?
Sure.
So typically clients will come to me and tell me like, we've got this page and it's not performing so well, or we find that a lot of people are signing up and then opting out. So like usually they're like sort of clear enough on like what's not working, that I can at least get a handle on like, okay, this is the problem we need to solve. Sometimes companies won't be aware of like just how, sort of just how poor like their website may be. But a lot of the times they're coming to me with a problem. So that part of it, that part of it is clear enough usually.
Got it.
And that's another reason why I sort of decided to pivot more into like the SaaS and tech space, because I found like with B2B, generally speaking, like it would just be, okay, so we need a new website. And without, just because I feel like it's time for a refresh, and without any specific it's like an achievable goal that's like the sort of like the objective of the project. Whereas like I find like with the companies that I currently serve, they have specifically measurable goals. Like we need the lead, this landing page is not performing properly. Like these emails are not converting. We need to like improve like the messaging and the copy so that we can like hit this certain target by the end of the year. You know what I mean? So it's more tied to the KPIs of the company.
And so your primary job is to just increase conversion, not necessarily like traffic. Like what other?
So it depends. So it like sort of depends on the project. Like typically it's about conversion. I mean, typically it boils down to conversion. Like this email, this pricing page is not converting as much as we'd like it to. What can you do to, how can you help us increase that conversion rate? So usually it's about that rather than necessarily like traffic levels. It's usually about converting that traffic to take that action, to take that next step in the funnel, where the pages try to lead them. A classic example, like I was just hired recently by a SaaS company to optimize their pricing page, right? So this company, they were like in the machine learning space. So they had a very complicated pricing model. Like it was just very complicated. Like I read the page and I had no clue what they were talking about. And they found that they weren't getting so many conversions on the pricing page. And like the calls that they had recorded with the customers, it was very clear that they got to the pricing page and their pricing model just threw them. They didn't understand like the terminology. They didn't understand like how they were going to be charged. And the biggest killer of conversions is confusion, right? A confused customer is not gonna take action. So we managed to increase the conversions on that page by 80% by just removing that piece of messaging, reworking the copy, making the sort of main value proposition of this company compared to the other companies in the space front and center of the messaging. And that made a massive difference. So like that's an example of one project where we got great results by optimizing that, optimizing the message on the page to make it clearer and simpler to understand.
And did the pricing model change at all, or it was just how you communicated it?
It was how we communicated it. We just removed a lot of like the confusing explanation from the page, so that like it wasn't putting it on like on the brain of the person reading it to like understand like all the different steps, because it was explained in a very sort of like low level way beforehand, and that I think that sort of like the complexity added a lot of like confusion. So just remove the explanation, kept it simple.
And like the process that you're using, it almost kind of sounds like, have you read the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek? It kind of sounds like that a
Yes.
little bit. He talks about how companies generally, when they're marketing, they're like, our product has this and that or whatever. And what companies need to do is pretty much like what Apple does. It's like, okay, you're this kind of person. You're the person that like challenges the status quo. Like, therefore, you're going to become immersed into this Apple brand almost. Is that kind of the idea behind what you try to do?
So I think that there is a lot of large part of my work is understanding like the company's why, is understanding the company's like core reason for why they exist. Like also like I do like a problem. If you're you're a CRM and the only reason you exist is because you just want to be a CRM. So then like there's no need for you. There's like 50 other companies that do the same thing. Whereas like if you actually have like a driving reason behind like why you set up the company in the first place, then that gives you the ability to have a much more compelling message that you communicate to your audience. I would say though, it's interesting you mentioned that book, that Start With Why, because I do think that book has led to a large amount of terrible marketing. And the reason is because the idea of starting with why means that the company has to be based around an idea, it has to be based around something which is driving them to do what they do. A lot of the times though, when you see like poorly expressed messaging, the company puts out its mission statement as like its leading message on its homepage. So, we are passionate about X, Y, and Z, right? And the problem there is that like the company doesn't care about you as a company, right? Sorry, the customer doesn't care about the company.
Yeah.
Right? The customer cares about themselves, right? So then I think that sort of like idea about starting with why got misunderstood almost, so that a lot of companies started with why, but they started like their sort of customer-facing messaging with their why, and the customer like doesn't care about your mission or your vision or like what you're passionate about. The customer cares about what you can do for them. So you have to use that sort of driving force behind what's behind your brand, and use that as a way to and connect that to where your customers are, rather than just sort of broadcasting like this is what we care about.
Because at the end of the day, the customer's trying to buy something to make their lives better, not trying to...
Right, exactly. Like the customer's buying the transformation. They're not buying like your reason for existing.
Okay. And what sort of trends are you seeing in companies' messaging that maybe are changing over time and moving towards... Do you see any sort of trends that are happening, or do you think it's all just down to the same thing: provide value to your customers and explain it clearly?
I think that's a lot of it. I don't see like a massive trend. I think that as time goes on and like the markets become more saturated, I think it's going to be more important for like you to I think it's going to be more important, or it could be potentially more beneficial to try messaging which is like very different to what's out there. Meaning like a lot of time, a big part of what I do is discovering getting like the voice of customer data, which is sort of like how customer expresses like their pain points, their desired outcomes, all the stages of what jobs they have to why they're hiring the product, what are their jobs, for example, and in the words of the customer. So like putting the words of the customer on the page as a way of like making the messaging compelling for the person reading it. And I think that as time goes on, more companies are tapping into that. I mean, it used to be that like a lot of companies would just write the message themselves without any reference to customer research, or understanding like this voice of customer data. And I think more companies are waking up to that. And then you sort of get to this, you get to a point where in a given space you could have a lot of companies with similar messaging on their homepage, because like they've all spoken to the customers and said, okay, so like what are you struggling with? Describe what your day is like without this product. So you'll hear similar things from like a similar sort of like customer segment. So that's where messaging, which is sort of way out there and which is more experimental, might now have better results than it might have had historically.
I definitely think there's a lot to be said about that, because with AI and technology in general and all the tools available to entrepreneurs, it's easier and easier to start a company. And so the companies that are winning, they need to stand out, and great copy.
Like, definitely, like AI makes the baseline, lowers the baseline, because it provides everyone with the sort of like availability of the same tool. So I agree.
What are some maybe important lessons you have from your journey that other people can take away from if they're thinking about entering copywriting?
So copywriting, I think any sort of space. I was thinking I think people trying to start off on there, like sort of go out on their own or like start their own business. I think don't wait for I would say one of the things I would advise people is that don't wait for other people sort of to give you permission to sort of do what you are trying to do. You have to sort of go out there and be bold and be prepared to put yourself in, in a position that might feel a bit uncomfortable, but don't like sort of like wait for someone else to sort of bestow on you like the status of now you are a copywriter, now you are allowed to do this. Like just do it. Like just go out and like just go out and do it. Don't wait for other people to tell you can, to give you permission. You have to like take the first step. And the other thing I would sort of say is like a network is very important, like especially in copywriting. Copywriting can be like a very sort of like lonely existence. Like I've heard a lot of people struggle with that. Like they sort of sitting at the computer, like typing all day. They don't really have like a peer group, and that makes a ton of difference. Like if you can get in there, if you can get like a community, if you can make yourself part of a community, so it makes all the difference. Like in terms of referrals, in terms of people to like bounce ideas off, like review your work, that can make all the difference. And I think that's something that's really helped me. Like I have a bunch of fellow copywriters that I'm just in the same community, same network as. We have an arrangement where we review each other's work, sort of for reciprocally. So like no one takes any money. Can you look at this homepage? Can you look at this email? Sure. Like, and that's a big value add of having a network. And the opportunities that I've got really from having a network have been amazing in terms of like the amount of revenue I've got. I've brought in from a referral from one other copywriter who like then that led to like a whole referral chain is amazing. So don't like make sure you're not on your own. Like make sure you join a community, become part of, build a network, because the opportunities that can give us like exponential in terms of how much they can grow your business.
Yeah. Where can people find those communities? Do you think LinkedIn is the best place for copywriters, or are there other places?
So LinkedIn, and in terms, it can be if you're sort of bold enough to reach out. Like I think another thing I would say to anyone really, like in any sort of field, is that people are like nicer than like you might think. Like people are kind, like people are willing to help. Like I found that a lot in like the business world. Like people, if you just reach out to them, you're open with them, you're like, you're not salesy, you're not coming from like a desperate place. You're just being genuine, or you offer them value. I think people are genuinely out to help others. People are further along like the journey than you are necessarily. So LinkedIn can be a place. I mean, there are copywriting communities. There's like the Copywriter Club. There are other communities out there which you can join. But you could do it on LinkedIn. But having a community is, I definitely think, a big plus, and also to try and connect with people that are further along than you are. Like that's been a big win for me. Like when I was starting out, like I reached out to people that like were, had more experience than me, and that like led to some tremendous opportunities, testimonials, because a lot of people who are ahead of you tend to have like overflow work. So the first gigs I got when I was starting out was overflow work. Other copywriters had too much, they had too many leads, or they wanted to subcontract, for example, and that's how I got, so I could subcontract for them. They saw my work, they were impressed. They referred me clients. It wasn't just under their name. They referred me clients. They would come on as my clients. So that's and I think that would work in any sort of service-based profession, like sort of make a connection to people who are like that one step ahead of you, and they can teach you, that you can learn from them, and that can sort of propel your journey.
Adam, I think it's really cool that you were able to build that community, because I think community is very important in really everything we do, and because your job is, you're pretty much it sounds like you're a solopreneur, right? And and sometimes I can probably feel very, very lonely. So building that community, I think, is very crucial. Well, one question I did have though, because you're primarily working or only working B2B, right? B2B SaaS at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say there's a big difference between your tactics between helping B2B SaaS and B2C SaaS, or?
So I don't have so much experience with B2B, like with B2C SaaS. I think that with like generally with B2B, like I think the messaging typically has to appeal to more people. Like there has to speak to more personas, because like when you're selling B2C, you're selling to the customer. Like the customer is like he's the guy that buy. The customer will make the purchase. They are the one that sort of making with all the consideration, and like you're talking directly to them. Whereas you're selling like an enterprise SaaS, right? Which is like you're talking about 100K a year contract. So the end user who's actually going to be using the software, and like he's the one or she's the one struggling with the issues that like every day that this product is solving, is most likely not the one making the purchasing decision. So you have to sort of communicate the value of the product on more than one level, because it has to also make sense for like the CFO, like the CEO, like the C-suite, but and it also has to be compelling for the end user. So like there is that like there is the element of like being able to communicate the message across more personas. And the other thing I would say is like with B2B, like emotion's always like an essential element of compelling copy, and not just focusing on like the rational elements of like the argument, but also like speaking to the emotions. But I do find with like B2B, like your CFO is not going to make like an emotional choice. Like, you know, your CFO needs to like hear a business case and it needs to make sense. So like, I think like there's also a slight difference there in terms of like the weight of like how much you focus on the emotions, how much you focus on like the rational arguments. Those would say like sort of key differences that stand out to me.
So you've got this niche down, this B2B niche. Are you thinking about like expanding from there and maybe potentially hiring other employees to help you, or are you just staying by yourself?
So I am thinking of taking on of scaling to build a team. In terms of that wouldn't be for the purpose of like expanding my niche and like going wider. I think I would advise anyone who's starting a business, copywriting or otherwise, to be as specific as you can. I think when you present as a generalist, it's hard for people to understand like what you do and like how you can help them. So the more specific you are in communicating your value and who you like, what you do and who you do it for, then the easier it is for people to find you. And the faster you also you get, and the better you get at doing what you do. Because when you're working on, if you're generalist, right, so you're working on many different types of deliverables for many different types of industries, so you're only working like one at a time. So like understanding the niche, understanding like the space, like how people think, what drives customers, like getting a deep appreciation for like the market you're writing for, only happens when you're doing it consistently. Whereas if you go too wide, so then you're not really focusing on any one space. So I'm happy where I am right now, and I'm not looking to branch out. In terms of like the breadth.
With that expansion, that scaling, do you have like anything specific in mind? It was interesting. Like yesterday, we had a call with another founder, and he was talking about how when he was looking to add new people to the team, he was looking for people that could replace him later on down the road, or people that he believed could be better than him down the road, which honestly was kind of interesting because I think it takes a lot of humility to do such a thing. Were you planning on doing something similar to that, or did you have your own plan in mind?
So my goal ultimately would be to hire people who would be able to replace me. I think in order that I could sort of take a step back and I could do less of the execution as time goes by, because like right now, so I'm a solopreneur, so like I'm doing all the work. And it's all me. I definitely see. I'm definitely looking at the moment to try to find people to expand, so that I could not be necessarily doing all the 100% of everything, and could take a more sort of like backseat or managerial type of role. That's definitely something that I'm looking to do. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. If you're okay, we can move on to the rapid fire questions here. If you're ready.
Okay, let's go. Okay.
I'm going to squeeze in one extra rapid fire question just because I think so. I'm going to ask one and then another right after, and we'll continue with the rest. But I'm curious, and try to keep the answers down to like 30 seconds. If you have to think for a little bit, think, but rapid fire once again. The first question I want to go with, is there any founders or executives you're paying attention to and following right now?
I think Pete Lasher, or I'm not sure how you pronounce his surname. He is like is the founder of Winter. If you're familiar, it's like a B2B messaging platform. So he's someone that I look up to very much. Like he's got a history of like seeing gaps in the markets and exploiting them to build new products. And
Awesome.
one of my mentors, so her name is like Michal Ezekowitz. She's a copywriter, and she's someone I sort of look up to as having been very successful in building a very effective team. So those are two people that I would
awesome. Question 2 now: how much sleep do you get?
Not enough. I can tell you, got thank God we have I've got 4 kids, and between them waking up at night and like everything else we're juggling, I could definitely do with more sleep. That 100%.
Awesome. I like that answer. Okay, so it looks like you got a nice bookshelf behind you. What's your favorite book and why?
What's my favorite book and why? Business book or in a book in general?
Any book.
So my favorite book, one of my favorite books at the moment is called On Writing by William Zinsser. So that was really foundational for me in sort of like reframing how I look at how I understood writing in terms of what makes writing good writing as opposed to not good writing, and actually how much you can actually improve your writing by just removing things which aren't necessary. And it sort of opened my eyes to really being able to analyze a piece of writing and seeing like how one can make it much better by just cutting out everything that's not necessary.
Awesome. If you had to start your career over again tomorrow with nothing, what's the first thing you would do?
What's the first thing that I would do? Reach out to someone that has been doing this for a while and ask them if I can help them out in any way by getting helping them out with the project they're working on and getting my feet wet that way. I think that was the most effective thing that I did at the beginning, so I would do that again.
Perfect.
What's most important to you in life?
What's most important to me in life? So what's most important to me in life is sort of like growing spiritually. So the reason why I do what I do and how I do it is because it allows me to devote a significant amount of my day to sort of religious study, which is what I do. I'm busy with that half of the day. So living a sort of a spiritually productive life and growing in that domain is what I would say is most important to me.
Awesome.
As an overall goal.
If you could change anything about the world, what would it be and why?
I think I would look to change myself. I think I look to try and change myself first before I try and make big changes in the world. I think if everyone tried to improve themselves and work on their own character traits and improve those, then I think it will be a much better place.
Is there anything specific you'd change about yourself?
Right, what I would change about myself, I would try and that's a hard question to answer on one foot. That's a hard question to answer on one foot. I would try and do more for others. I think I would try and devote more of my time to helping other people.
Last question here. How do you want to be remembered?
How do I want to be remembered? As someone who was honest, good to other people, tried to do their best always. Was a good husband, a good father, and someone who always strived to do the best they could in all their endeavors. In everything they tried to do, they always tried to do the best they could, to the best of their ability. I would if you gave me a bit more time, I could come up with something. I would think of something a bit more developed. That would be
No, I think that's exactly what people look for in a copywriter, just someone doing the absolute best they can. And so I think that's an awesome place to leave off with this episode. Once again, Adam, thank you so much for joining us here.
Thanks for having me, guys. All the best.
Of course.
Thanks a lot.
We'll be sure to link to everything Adam is on and where you can find him, especially his LinkedIn, in case you need some help with your copywriting for your project. But until then, we'll see you next week, Tuesday at noon. Don't be late. We'll see you there.